This episode is brought to you by HP Plus. In a world full of smart devices, isn't it about time your printer got smart too? Now printing is smart with HP Plus, and the HP Smart app is how it all happens. You can print from your phone with just a tap, no matter where you are, even from your garage/home office/yoga studio. Huh, that is smart. HP Plus. Learn more about smart printing at hp.com/smart.
Okay, everybody, welcome to the latest episode of All Too Real 2. My name is Michael E. Cullen II, and with me, as always, is...
Matthew Haas.
Matthew Haas. That is my friend, my co-host, my hetero life mate. Anyway, so today we have an all-two interview with the stand-up comic, actor, and author, Steve Sabo. It was a great interview that I did the other day with him. He's a great guy. He's referred to as the caffeinated voice of reason. He's an edgy, angry, honest, and hilarious comic, according to his website. He besides the year of the pandemic, he works 52 weeks a year on the road as a comic. So every week of the year, basically. No stage is too big or too small for him. You've seen him on. He's been doing this for 29 plus years, probably like 30 years now, I guess. He's had the privilege of sharing the stage with legends such as Joan Rivers, Chris Rock, Kevin James, Dave Attel, Jim Breuer, Christopher Titus, Tom Green. He's made television appearances on HBO, NBC, E, Comedy Central, and he is heard regularly on SiriusXM Satellite Radio, and has appeared on nationally syndicated Sex Talk Live, and he has appeared on hold on. He has made television appearances on HBO, NBC, E, and Comedy Central. He can be heard regularly on SiriusXM Satellite Radio, and has appeared on the nationally syndicated Sex Talk Live, the BTS Radio Show, and the Jiggy Jaguar Show. In addition, he has landed the lead in low-budget horror film Hell's Lake, currently in post-production. He's entertained the troops in Iraq and Kuwait, performed at the 2007's Gathering of the Juggalos, and has been seen nationally and internationally at such festivals as Gilda's Laugh Fest 3 times, Calgary's Funny Fest, the Detroit International Comedy Festival, and Great Plains Comedy Festival. He's performed in 46 states, 7 countries, and 4 islands. He also filmed a cameo in another full feature-length film called Pi Day Die Day, directed by Michael E. Cullen II. It doesn't say that on there, but I'm just wanted to point that out.
Who's that guy?
Yeah, that'd be me.
I don't know that guy.
Yeah. And that was released theatrically on March 14th of 2016. On May of 2017, he was honored to perform at Rock on the Range, the nation's largest rock musical festival, headlined by Metallica.
Sweet.
Yeah. So he's an admitted workaholic. It was a great interview that I had with him. He's got a new book out called How to Fail at Stand-Up Comedy, which basically tells you the do's and don'ts of stand-up comedy. from the perspective of touring comic, also with some life advice and stuff in there that he talks to us about or me about, and he's also got a novel out. He's working on another one. Talk a little bit more about that in there, but he's a great guy, great interview. Hopefully you enjoy this, so stick around, and here's my interview now with Steve Sabo. Okay, first off, I'd just like to thank you, Steve, for joining us today. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing great, man. I'm trying to adjust my camera so I have less forehead in the picture. Is that weird?
Well, that's fine. I mean, this is just going to be audio, but you're good.
Was it just audio? Oh,
yeah,
good.
Unfortunately, yeah, because my video's not that good. So I mean, I don't care. I look ugly, so I'm good.
I'm just looking at myself in the picture and I go, oh, I've got a lot of forehead going on. I should have grabbed a hat, but this is great.
That's why I wear one. Hats are good for that factor. The first question I'd like to ask you is, like, so you've been doing stand-up for a long time.
Yeah.
What got you interested in comedy?
Well, I started doing. Here's the thing. When I figured this out. It's weird when you look back on your past, right? But yeah. I always liked comedy as a kid. I always watched the, Johnny Carson when he'd have comics on a Friday night at the very end, and then HBO, when that started coming out, they used to do the HBO specials, and then they had the comic relief thing. Yeah. I think I'm older than you, so I don't know if you remember that, but
yeah, I do. Yeah.
Like on New Year's Eve, they had these little specials and stuff like that, and it was great. And I always liked stand-up, and like as a kid, I had a bunch of comedy cassettes. Like, it's really weird, but I had like a cassette of Richard Pryor and Eddie Murphy and who else did I have? I had Andrew Dice Clay and people like that. And where other kids would be driving down the road on their bikes, with a boombox playing music, I was blasting Eddie Murphy and Richard Pryor and George Carlin and stuff like that. So I always loved it. But I remembered weirdly just a couple of years ago that. And I think it was the third grade. There was a third or fourth grade. There was a talent contest, and I told jokes in between, the acts they had. So I guess my very first stand-up routine, I was like 8 years old, something like that, 8 or 9 years old. But yeah, I guess I was always destined to be it. I always liked it, but I never thought I'd actually be a comedian. But I've always kind of been drawn to comedy because, some people, their idols were always sports stars or actors, but my idols were always comedians. I always thought they were great.
That's awesome. So you talked about, Murphy and Pryor and Carlin and people like that and Dice Clay. Who would you say is like your biggest influence when you first started doing comedy? Like the person that you were drawn to the most?
Yeah, that's a really good question. When I first started, it's weird because when you look back 30 years later, you try to figure out that I was probably influenced by a big group of all of them, really. Yeah. But I was nothing. I started off, believe it or not, when I first started doing comedy, I was an impressionist. So I tried to do, which is nothing like what I do now. I don't do any impressions now. So I'm trying to think if there's anybody back then that maybe even Robin Williams was more of an impressionist, but I wasn't manic like him. Yeah. So I think it was just a combination of, probably a combination of Jay Leno and Jerry Seinfeld and with Sam Kinison thrown in there, But if it was I didn't really get into Bill Hicks right away, but when I did get into Bill Hicks, I was all into Bill Hicks. Yeah. So he's probably my biggest influence as a young comic going up. But when I very first started, he wasn't even in the picture at that point in time. He was, but I didn't really know of him. Yeah. I didn't become aware of him until after he died, which is kind of sad. But yeah,
he died way too young. He
died way too young.
Probably one of my favorite comics of all time.
Yeah, what was great about him, I thought, was that I try to introduce him to people now, and they're like going, "Well, people aren't even laughing on his CDs." And I'm like, "Yeah, that it wasn't all about the laughter back then. He's making a point. What people don't understand is that because comedy changed so much, back then almost all comedy was all observation. It was all Jerry Seinfeld. It was, what's the deal with this? What's the deal with that? Have you ever noticed this? Do you ever notice that? But Bill Hicks was talking about true emotions and real, basically real stuff. I don't know if we can curse. Real shit.
Oh yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
And it was revolutionary back then. Just as revolutionary as Richard Pryor was. He was revolutionary on the white side of it too. It was just completely different, and people don't recognize that he basically almost single-handedly changed, how people approach stand-up.
Yeah, I mean, the thing about stand-up too is, I mean, a lot of times, you do have your observational things, but I really am drawn to the people that are like trying to make you think about things, and that's what I think comedy is there for in a lot of ways, is to make you think about the world in a different way.
Yeah.
The
I agree.
So you've been doing this for how long now? Have you been doing comedy?
30 years as of February.
Wow.
So yeah, isn't that crazy? Mm-hmm. I know, it's when you think about that, like I thought about that. What's kind of funny is this is where I really started thinking about this. I was in Vegas last year at some point in time. And the concierge guy said he had been, working there for 15 years. And I thought to myself, I go, oh, wow, this guy's been here for 15 years. He really knows what he's doing. And then I thought to myself, wait a minute, I've been doing my job twice that long. I really know what I'm doing. Like it didn't even cross my mind how long 30 years really is. But it's a long time.
That's crazy. I know I've seen you a couple times, and I mean you're hilarious. You tour like all the time. How did the pandemic affect you when it came to comedy?
Oh, the pandemic sucked really bad because I had this great schedule lined up. Like I had, if you know about comics, comedy is weird because we're constantly looking for the next gig. So we're trying to constantly book ahead. And a lot of times you might have a solid schedule for a month, month and a half, maybe up to 2 months, and then you'll have other bookings sporadically out there. But when 2000 hit, beginning of 2000, my schedule was great. I had gigs all the way up until into November. I had gigs all the way booked into November. I had, solid, almost a couple of weeks open, but almost completely solid for 7 months. And then, you keep hearing about the pandemic, hearing about these things, and this is going to, well, but they're not going to shut us down. That's not going to really happen. And then it slowly did, like state by state, people started closing down. So little by little, I'm losing a gig here, then I'm losing a gig here. And then you get a call and going like, well, we're not technically closed, but people are getting paranoid, so we're going to reschedule the show for later. And then so it was like week for week I had all these gigs lined up, and they were just dropping little by little. It wasn't all at once, it was like little by little, but like I my gigs this week dropped, and then my gigs next week dropped, and then my gigs the week after that dropped. And it's like it was just slowly like watching a house of cards just crumble in slow motion, and it was awful. And so a lot of comics did Zoom shows and stuff like that. I think I did, technically one Zoom show, maybe.
Yeah.
And I hated it. Oh, it was just awful. It was the weirdest thing because, there's a delay, and then you're waiting for laughter that isn't there like it's supposed to be there. So your timing is completely off. So then you speed up, and then you realize that they're not catching on to the jokes anyway. So you're not going to get the laugh. And it's just like everything is just completely thrown off guard. So I ended up doing some shows. I would do shows, some weird shows. Like I flew out to wherever I could just to get stage time. And like I went down to Georgia because they were open, and I went to Colorado, did some parking lot shows, like some, where cars, we were on stage and cars pulled up.
Yeah.
And you're performing at a drive-in in front of all these people, and it was the weirdest thing. So everything had gone strange, and then some places they had, reduced capacity, so I could do a show, but there's 12 people in a cavernous room, and they're spread out 30 feet from the stage, and then 20 feet from each other, and it's it was very, very strange. So I'm so happy that things are starting to get back. Most places are back, for the most part now. But now we're in summer, and things slow down naturally for comics in summer. So,
oh, jeez.
Yeah. No, because people want to get out. People want to go out and do things, because the weather's nice.
Yeah,
but
they want to be inside a club or something.
Exactly. So, but I do have some outside shows scheduled, and I do have some other things in the works. So, I'm not complaining right now. I'm really not.
That's good. So Bob Fredericks on my group for this page for this podcast asked about like your first gigs. Like he said you had to have brass to do that. Because it's scary. I mean, how scary was it when you first started doing comedy, and where was it that you started?
Yeah. So that's good. That's really kind of a good point, because when I first started, I was too young to know better, and that's probably what helped me. I was 18 years old when I first did stand up for the very first time. I was going to college at the University of Miami, Florida, and there was a Certs college comedy competition, and it was being advertised all over the campus, and I saw it. I go, oh, that'd be so cool, and I'm like, I mean, can I do that? Could I do it? I was like, nah, I'm not going to do that. But then. So it was advertised for weeks, and probably, even up to a month or so in advance. And I kept passing by the flyer every day, and I just never signed up, and I never signed up. And then on the very last day that you're allowed to sign up, I gave them a call. I said, you know what? I'd hate myself if I didn't, just see, fully expecting them to go, sorry, all the spots are filled. We can't get you in, and then I'd have that cop out and go, well, I tried, The guy's like, sure. We'll get you in. And I was like, oh, crap. Now I've got 3 days to write a whole routine when everybody else had like a month or more to do this. And so I guess I didn't really have a lot of time, but I was scared to death. Like I was because I remember all this, right? Very first time, 30 years ago, I remember this to the day. The room was packed, absolutely packed. It's called the Rathskellers where they performed. And it was a 2-story basic campus bar. So there's a big balcony that swung all the way around. It was kind of like in a circle, and then there was a stage in the middle with the bar behind us. And I was number 12 of 15. So I had to watch 11 other people go up before me. And each time somebody new went up, I'm about to pass out because I'm not that afraid. And I kept saying to myself, like, I'm not going to do it. I'm going to leave. I'm going to pretend something happened. I'm going to, lock my stuff in the bathroom and pretend I didn't hear my name getting called. I'm just not going to. So I just kept coming up with every excuse I could possibly get to not do it. But then it was my turn, and I just went, I just took a breath and went, whew, okay, I'm going to do it. And I did. And the first time I did it, I just walked up, and I remember every second. Like slow motion again, like we said, of when he called my name to walking out to the microphone, and it took like forever. It took forever to get there. And then I don't remember anything about the performance itself, but I remember walking up there and then saying goodnight, and then, I know that I got huge applause and people were laughing, and it was great. And all I remember is immediately afterwards going, I've got to do this again. And I never felt more alive than I did at that moment. Like, I've never done drugs. I'm not a drug guy, but I imagine it kind of feels like what somebody feels, the first time they do drugs. It was just like everything was brighter, everything was louder, everything was more intense. Every sensation was amplified. And I was like, man, I've got to do this again. And I learned so much that day because I didn't know that there was open mics. I didn't know that a normal person could just go to a comedy club, on an open mic night and sign up and perform in front of people. I thought, I didn't know anything. I was young. I didn't even know comedy clubs existed outside of New York and LA. I just figured it was like just there, And I learned so much because some of the other people that were performing had done stand up many, many, many times, and I didn't even know you could. But I was probably too dumb to realize how insane it was. I was too young and dumb to know that doing it was insane. And I did it and fell in love with it, and I guess the rest is history. I guess.
Yeah.
I took it seriously, though. That's the weird thing, is that the first 3 years I did comedy, I didn't think at all that I was going to be a comedian. But there's this one day I remember, I don't remember what club I was in, but I remember I had a great set, and I was standing in the back of the club, and I said to myself, after about 3 years, I said, if I did this for the rest of my life, if I could just pay my bills doing this, I don't have to be rich, I don't have to be famous, but just being allowed, to spend my life being on stage and making people laugh, I'll do it for the rest of my life. I don't even care. And I've held on to that.
That's awesome. I know the feeling, like I've done theater, I've never done stand-up, but I mean, I've done a lot of acting, and that feeling where you're on stage and you don't remember the actual stage. You remember walking up there and leaving, but you don't remember the actual performance, which is kind of interesting. It's weird how that works in your mind, but you did something. Because I've had that happen numerous times where I've walked off stage and I was like, I don't remember that play at all. I don't.
Yeah, you blank. It's almost like a car accident, right? Like when you have a car accident, you don't remember any part of the accident. You remember before and you remember after, but you don't remember any of the during.
Yeah. What kind of advice? I mean, I know you've got a new book out. First, we'll talk about that. Like, I'll bring that up. It's like How to Fail at Stand-Up Comedy. Is what it's called? Yeah. I love the name. So it what kind? I'm sure you got some of this in the book. But what kind of advice would you give to anybody that's trying to start out like that? Like the number one thing that you wish you knew when you started. Right.
So that's the big question, right? So there never is just one thing that you wish you knew. So I always have there's always a little several different things, right, that I pass on to people when they ask me for advice. And it comes down to it really depends on what area they're asking about. But I actually ended up giving this advice to somebody very recently who had a terrible set. It was this girl, a female comic, and she was doing some outdoor show. And she had a terrible set, and she immediately thought she goes, I can't do this. I shouldn't be doing comedy because I couldn't make these people laugh. And what I told her was something that got passed down to me, almost 25 years ago. And they said, whenever you have a bad set, only take half the blame, because there are other circumstances there that created the rest of it. There's the audience, there's the stage, there's the lighting, there's the sound, there's all those different other factors. So you're only half responsible for that. But in that same token, when you have a great set, only take half the credit, because all those other factors were involved there as well. And that's the perfect way to stay balanced at all times. That way you never get too big of a head, and you never, get in too big of a depression from having that. So I think it's very important to stay balanced at all time for comedy. I also think that, for somebody who's never done comedy ever in their lives, the best advice I would give to somebody is go watch a professional show, watch it live, a professional show, and then go to an open mic and watch that live before you ever get up on stage, and see the difference and understand, that this is a professional show, this is an amateur show, and there's a very distinct difference. Because there's a lot of people that they get into comedy and they've only gone to open mics. They've never seen a live, professional show. They've seen stuff on TV, they've seen the Netflix specials and stuff like that. So they just don't really understand there's a whole different dynamic out there. And they think that just because they can do, 30 or 40 minutes of comedy, that makes them a headliner. But it doesn't. A headliner is a very different animal completely. So it's important to know where you actually stand in the world of comedy. And I also think it's important to go into your first open mic with jokes. And I know that sounds like an obvious thing, but you'd be surprised how many people come up to me and they go, well, I'm just going to go up there and wing it, and I'm going to talk about my day, I'm going to talk about this, I'm going to talk about that. I'm like, you're going to bomb so bad. Right, because you can make your friends laugh when you're sitting in a bar because they're your friends and you're sitting in a bar. But when people pay money to watch you be funny, they don't want to hear about your day. They want to hear something that you put some effort into, some time into, and actually have crafted into a joke. And you need to have something, to deliver.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of people out there that are, funny at work or funny at the bar, who probably aren't funny on the stage. It's just the way it is. It's a
completely different thing. Yeah, it's completely different. That's the thing that a lot of people don't. They just don't understand is they go, but these people look like they're just making it up. I go, yeah, that's the art, you know. I work really hard to make it look like I'm not working hard at all. That's the basic line.
Yeah. I'm trying to think. Currently, like, what kind of obstacles do you think there are in the world of stand-up comedy besides the pandemic? Like any other kind of obstacles that are going on?
Yeah, one of the biggest problems right now, and you see it in the news all the time, is the whole cancel culture thing. The whole the woke situation that we have right now is that audiences, especially at comedy clubs, are getting really nervous about certain material. So they're afraid that you're gonna push a button and trigger somebody, but they're also they're afraid to laugh, and they might think it's hilarious. I've done some jokes at places before where people came up to me afterwards, man, I thought that was hilarious, but I couldn't laugh because I was with the boss, or I was with the girlfriend, or I was with these people, and people, they just got this. There's a tension. There's a tension out there right now that says you're not allowed to laugh at certain subjects, and there are some comics that will go forth and they'll do what they can to push those buttons and try, to upset people because they think that's what comedy is. But you can joke about anything, and I've always said this a million, all over the place. Anybody can joke about anything, but not everybody can joke about something and make it actually funny, and that's the difference. It takes a certain level of skill. It takes a very particular level of skill to be able to do, edgy material, especially nowadays. Particularly edgy material. Like if you're doing a joke about transgenders or God forbid, Black Lives Matter or something like that, it better be really, really funny, and it better not, make anybody a victim so you're not punching down.
Yeah.
So, it's really tough, navigating that, because you can have a joke like let's say you can write a gay joke and gay people find it hilarious, but people that aren't gay will be offended for those people. Yeah. And that's the weirdest thing. That's kind of a new dynamic that's just kind of creeped in the last 5 years, is people being offended for other people. Like they feel like they need to stand up for, everybody else's rights when those people themselves, aren't actually offended.
Yeah, I mean that's a good point you brought up there too. It's the you got to be punching up and not punching down when it comes to the things, because that's where people don't get it, and that's where people make mistakes. Is if you're, making fun of somebody lower than you, you're kind of being risky. And I mean, I've seen that. I mean, because that's the thing where when I think the difference between a cancel culture and a consequence culture is what I like to call it, because I think a lot of times is that people don't realize that there's consequences for your actions. But I mean, of course, if you're being a complete racist or a complete, homophobic person or something like that, and punching down on those people, you deserve any kind of backlash you might get. But if you're but if you're making an observational, comment that's not punching down but punching up or something, that's different. Than the people don't understand that, and I understand why people are afraid to laugh, because you don't know, especially like you said, if you're with your boss or your girlfriend or your wife or your husband, that might be more sensitive about the thing. You never know. So. Right,
100%, and that's why it's always easier when you make your material personal, make it be about yourself. Mm-hmm. So. Because if you're making fun of yourself or how you view life and things like that, people can't really, be that offended because it's you, and you're the one saying it. So they can't be mad about that. Like so anything you talk about, if you're short or you're tall or whatever you are, if you're left-handed, if you do jokes about those particular things and you are that, whatever that dynamic is, then people can laugh along with you. But like if you're, say, 6'4" and you're making jokes about guys that are 5'2", that's probably not, going to work out very well for you.
Yeah. It's like, I remember a quote from like the director Kevin Smith where he was talking about the fact that people tried to say that he was making gay jokes in his films, but what he pointed out is that Jay was the one saying those, and he's the stupid one in the movie. And what he was trying to point out is the fact that making those jokes is the stupid thing. So it's all about context, it's just
right. Absolutely. And that's what I call layering when it comes to a joke, right? Is that don't look at the joke on the surface, because that's not necessarily what the joke is. The joke might be that you're actually making fun of a person who would make that joke, just like, Kevin Smith made that.
Yeah. Because, it's a tricky situation nowadays. I mean, you do have, people are more offended now, but, I understand it. And plus, we've got a more social network kind of culture where it's like you can easily react to things easily. People with their cell phones in a comedy club or wherever, it can easily destroy a career. But yeah.
And I read somewhere that it's only like 2% of people on Twitter that cause all the uproar. That 98% of people don't do anything, but that 2%, that vocal 2%, that can destroy careers. That's just, it's crazy to think about that. It's amazing.
Yeah. I mean, it's always because it's like when you go to a restaurant and you have good service, you don't usually go on to Yelp or something and talk about how great your service was. But if you have bad service, you will go on Yelp and talk about how horrible it was. Yeah,
That's the truth. Back in the day with comedy clubs, this is the funniest thing, is comedy clubs used to have comic cards that they'd leave on the tables, and people would fill out the comic cards. And the crazy part was you could have 100 comic cards that said, "We love that guy. He's the best guy. Keep bringing him back." But you have 2 comic cards that say, "We hate him," and you might not be booked back just because of those 2 cards. And it's kind of the same way with Twitter right now. It's weird.
Yeah, I mean, and it's also the thing, you can do that to yourself too. Like if you read those comments, everybody else, like 90 people could say you're great, but there's those 2 people that say you're horrible. You're probably going to remember those 2 and not the, 90 people.
Nothing could be more true. When you're on stage and you can have a room full of people, 200 people in the audience, 300 people in the audience, and everybody's laughing except for table 7, you will always see table 7. No matter where you are, where you're looking, your peripheral is zoomed in on table 7, and your brain's going, "Why are they not laughing? What did I do to them? Why are they mad at me? Why don't they laugh? I'm going to get them with the next joke. I'm going to find out what's going to make those people laugh." And you just end up being focused just on that one table of people that don't like you. And they may have actually really liked you, but they just don't, express it the same way other people do. Yeah. It's a crazy thing.
About your book too, what brought you to wanting to write the book? Like what was the catalyst for that?
It's a really good question. So I guess there's a multitude of reasons. So one of the reasons is, the pandemic hit, and I had a lot of time on my hands. And the first thing I did is, because I didn't want to be idle, and that's the last thing you want to do. And I wasn't having a good time, coming up with a lot of jokes to write, because most of my jokes come from living life and doing things. And I wasn't going anywhere. I wasn't doing anything. And there's not a lot of jokes you can write about, you can write 100 jokes about there's a toilet paper shortage, but that's, everybody's heard of it. Everybody's living the same experience at that point. So what I ended up doing first was I wrote my first novel. I wrote that. It's called Jester's Run, and that's also available on Amazon. And because I had an idea in my head for about 10 years of a story I wanted to write. And but I never had time, because I'm always on the road. I'm always traveling. And when I'm home, I barely have time to do laundry and get back on the road. So, but I had time, and I wrote the novel, and I was super, excited about it. But I had finished that, but even between drafts, I had to write something else, because you can't just focus on just that one thing. And comedy is what I know. And I always thought to myself, because there are times where people had asked me to teach comedy classes, and I didn't want to teach a comedy class, because every comedy class always ends up being the same. Every comedy class is, here's what you do. You take the microphone, put it out of the stand, obey the light, all these different types of things. Very simple ideas that anybody could teach, really. You don't have to, you can be a comedian for 2 years and teach somebody else to be, a comedian, because the basics are all the same. You can teach somebody to be a comedian, but you can't teach somebody to be funny. And there's a big difference between those 2 points, Yeah. You can tell somebody, where to look and give them all kinds of hints and how to write and these kind of things, but it doesn't teach you the things that you can only learn from being on stage. That's what, comedy really is about, being on stage. You can have somebody, that's why some people will do comedy for 10 years or 20 years and still be in pretty much the same position they've always been at, because they just don't have it in them. It just doesn't click with them. But for most people, it takes a few years, but 100 times on stage, 150 times on stage, 200 times on stage, and suddenly, little by little, little nuances, you get better. You get better and you get better. But I always thought to myself that there are so many things that they don't teach you in these comedy classes that they really need to teach you. And it's mostly life things, right? But they'll teach you things like how, if you're going to make a living at comedy, you have to go on the road. And going on the road is incredibly hard to do. And you can't just say, I'm going to go on the road, because, you have to be ready to go on the road, right? You have to have a good car. You have to, how it's just, there's just so many dynamics to it, right? To traveling.
Yeah.
And you have to book yourself out, because that's one of the things I tell people, and I talk about this in the book a little bit too, is that when I first decided to be a professional comedian, one of the things I did was I booked 12 straight weeks of work, and I quit my day job. And then I had 12 straight weeks of work, and that was it. I had nothing else after that, because once I booked 12 weeks, I thought that it was just going to keep going on its own, but it doesn't go on its own. It's a constantly moving, flowing process of booking more shows and auditioning for more people and doing these kind of things. And it's all these things that you're going to need, because one of the problems that people don't even understand also is that let's say you live in Chicago, and your show might work in Chicago, but that show that works in Chicago might not work in small town Georgia, or it might not work in Boston, or it might not work in, wherever else.
Yeah.
So you have to figure out a way to be universal with your act and not, locational, not just something that's only regional that works for certain people. So you got to learn how to do that, and you got to learn how to organize your time. And like you have a gig that's 2 hours away, you can't leave 2 hours before that gig to get there. You have to leave 4 hours before that gig to get there, because you never know what's going to happen. There could be traffic, there could be an accident, there could be road closures, there's construction, there's a million different other factors that come in there that a lot of people, they don't think of. And it could be a time change. That happens a lot too, that people don't consider when they're booking things and things like that. And you have to have enough money to get from point A to point B, and you might be paid by a check, and you might not have cash to get home, and there's so many different factors. So I thought, nobody's ever written a book about what it's actually like to be a comic, because the books that you see are either here's a how-to be a comic book, how to be a stand-up, or it's a book by somebody famous, like Kevin Hart, where he talks about his life, but he's not living the life of a normal comic. He's not living the life of somebody who's been doing comedy for 3, 4, 5, 10 years.
Yeah.
There needs to be a book out there that tells people things like that. Things like basic things like don't get hammered on stage, don't get completely drunk. Don't try to fuck the wait staff. That's an important one. That people don't think of it. They think that, oh, I'm a star. This is part of the gig. It's not part of the gig. You're not supposed to do that. That's going to get you not booked back. That's how that works. About having different videos that you can send out to comics, about how one of the things that people need to understand is that you're going to contact 100 bookers, and you're going to have 100 bookers ignore you completely. And it's a lot more than being funny, and it's a lot more than being available. It's a combination of things. It's about who you know and knowing the secrets of how to actually get your foot in the door. And that's what none of these books teach you until this book. This is the first book I've ever seen, and I only wrote it because I thought there was a huge gap in there missing about how people can actually be successful as a comedian. So I called it How to Fail at Stand-Up Comedy, for the simple reason of it's a book about all the mistakes I've made in my 30-year career and how I overcome them and what it takes to be a survivor and be successful. And I think I've made it so far. Anyway, we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, I like the title. I mean, one of my favorite screenwriting books is called How Not to Write a Screenplay. So it's kind of a similar concept, which I love that idea. So
for sure, you need to know what not to do in order to do the right things right. And I think that's really important, because I think when you see people doing the exact same thing, like here's an example, right? Something I would tell people not to do. is if you're a stand-up comic, don't wear a black hoodie on stage, and carry your notebook with you, because I don't know, 98% of comics do that, so you just look like exactly everybody else that's out there doing the thing. You want to stand out, not blend in when it comes to something like that. So have something more unique to you. Don't just, these people are dressed like this, then I need to dress like this. That's not really how it works. You need to be, a little bit different than that.
Yeah, you got to have your own hook or something, that'll make people remember you. I mean, it doesn't have to be something crazy, but something at least that's memorable. Yeah,
just something. Wear a nice shirt. Shave before you go up on stage. Is that too much to ask? Shower. I mean, that's an idea. Don't look homeless. I don't know. I know.
Yeah, I love it when there's a comic who you can tell has their own unique, like there's something about them. Sometimes you can't even put your finger on it, but that makes them memorable. Like, you won't forget that, because I watch a lot of stand-up comedy and I couldn't name half the people that I've seen.
Right.
But there are those ones that stand out that I, remember, and that's the ones I like, the best.
Yeah. And the French call that je ne sais quoi,
yes.
Right? a certain something. And it's and it's true, right? There's some sort of a magnetism that draws you to them, and you don't even know why, but you are compelled to watch them, and you were just you're riveted. You're stuck there watching them. And other people, you just they could be the funniest people in the world theoretically. The jokes could be really good, but you could walk away and go, It just doesn't sit with you.
Speaking of which, of like the comics that are working right now, who are some of your favorites that you've seen?
So my favorite comic, I think, if you're talking like, big name comics that people would know, by far is Bill Burr. I love Bill Burr. I think I don't know. I've always liked Bill Burr, but he's just gotten better and better as the years have gone on. And he just, his ability to be both edgy and honest and personal at the same time, he gets away with so much stuff that most comics can't. And that's the thing that I would encourage people to look at people like that and go, why does it work for him? What is he doing, right? What is he doing right? Whatever it is, he's really doing it right. So I really like him. I haven't seen him in a couple of years, but I Anthony Jeselnik, I love his joke writing style. He's just got a great way of writing a joke that takes a left turn out of nowhere. And I just think that as far as, it's dark and it's demented, but as far as just structurally how to write a good joke, that's somebody you should, really pay attention to. And I still like Jim Jeffries. I didn't love his last special as much as I usually like him, but I think he's really good too.
Yeah, his last one wasn't as good as like Freedom. That one was really good. I mean, I think that's his best, probably.
And the Holocaust, even back in the day, is just like, oh my gosh, it's so so many laughs. Yeah.
Yeah. What was the novel you wrote? What's that about? Just curious.
So Jester's Run is about it's basically about a stand-up comedian, because you write about what you know, right? Mm-hmm. About a stand-up comedian who hooks up with the wrong girl. Ends up catching a horrible disease. It is not an autobiography, just to clarify. Catches up with a horrible disease, almost starts a brand new pandemic, and he gets chased down by some government agents. And it's basically it's a thriller, and I don't want to. It's hard to even explain without without telling you much. But it's about a stand-up comedian, trying to do his thing. Meanwhile, trying to keep away from government agents who are trying to basically, he thinks they're trying to kill him when they're really just trying to cure him in the long run. And it's got a lot of turns, a lot of twists, a lot of turns, a lot of comedy, but it's action and adventure. Honestly, obviously, I love it because I wrote it. Yeah. But I've gotten a lot of really good feedback off of it, and I think if nothing else, it really stands on its own, just because there's not a lot of books out there about stand-up comics as a character, and lifestyle. So you really kind of it's a unique kind of point of view as far as a thriller goes, and a lot of people have really told me that they really liked that they didn't see where it was going. It wasn't just, a lot of times you turn on a TV show nowadays and 5 minutes in, you know how it's going to end.
Yeah.
And you won't get that with this book, and that's why it's really great.
That's awesome. I'll have to check that one out too, because that sounds interesting. It sounds like it would almost make a good movie or something. Just the basic. Yeah,
a lot of people have said to me. They said that when they watched it, or when they read it, they felt like they were watching a movie in their mind. And that's kind of how I wrote it. I wrote it with short chapters, with a lot of action, with a lot of cliffhangers. It's one of those things where you're reading it and you get to the end of the chapter and you go, I got to start the next chapter. I got to read the next chapter. I got to get to the next chapter. And before you know, it's done. And that's what I wanted. I wanted it to be a book that you could pick up and read on an airplane or pick up on the beach and you wouldn't want to put down.
That's cool. Speaking of acting and stuff, movies, you've done a little bit of acting. I know you were in a movie I directed called Pi Day Die Day, and I know you've been in other things. I
was killed in the first act.
Yeah, I think you were the first person killed in the movie. So yeah. Yeah.
I was a yoga instructor. I was informed by some people that my stance was terrible in yoga.
In yoga? Well, yeah. Well, that's more reason for you to be killed. What else have you been doing acting wise? How have you liked that so far? The little bit you've done here.
Yeah, acting is fun. I haven't done a lot lately, but I enjoy acting. It's a different dynamic. The problem I have with acting, and I do like it. I do, but especially when you're acting on TV or film, is that you don't get to see how it really came out until months and months or years later, and that is the complete difference with stand-up. Yeah. Like I love the immediate reaction of stand-up, and that's what's great. Like even like for a book, it's torturous for me for that, because it takes you 6 months or a year to write a book, and then you put it out there and you wait for people to read it and get feedback, and then if they don't like it, you just wasted a year of your life. That's the same thing with the movie or a TV show and stuff like that. Where with stand-up, if you write a joke and it doesn't work, you can try that joke again the next day or at least the next week and figure out how to make it, work. So I love the immediacy of stand-up more than anything else. But I do enjoy acting. I like playing off other people, and having it's more where it's not just you. That's the thing about stand-up, is that it's everything. 100% of it is just you. It's your words. It's you on stage, and you wrote it, you performed it. Where acting is more. There's a word I can't find in my head. Collaborative. Good.
Yeah.
Perfect.
That's what I always think of film. Film is like the most collaborative media that's out there, I think, film and TV.
For sure.
Because it's just, because like you said, with stand-up, you're yourself, unless you're like a duo, but, you gotta,
right.
but, that's basically what it is. Or like, in any other thing, it's like you're basically just worried about yourself. You're not worried about everybody else. But with filmmaking, it's really hard. You got to worry about every single person involved. Which is why it's sometimes hard to do.
Yeah, well, for sure, because you got a writer, you got a director, you have the actors, and you have lighting, you have sound, and there's a million things that can go wrong, and somebody has to coordinate all of that, and that's tough.
And like you said, you never know what the result is until months or years later, and you're just like, it could just totally suck. You're just like, wow, I wasted a whole year of my life, like you said with your book, making a movie, and it's like, okay, yeah, nobody likes it. It happens. Speaking of like movies and stuff like that, because the topic of our podcast is like films and pop culture and stuff. What would you say? There's a weird question I like to ask people. What's a guilty pleasure movie that you like to watch that you sometimes don't like to admit that you like to watch?
Oh, that's a really good question. So I like. It's going to be one of those things that it's going to be kind of weird. I like horror movies. I've always really liked horror movies.
Yeah. And
certain ones that I really have an affinity for. And one of those is a movie called Pumpkinhead. I don't know if you've ever heard of that.
Yeah, I've seen it. Yeah.
That movie is so good. Just because it's more than first off, Lance Henriksen is amazing. Starring in that role. Like he is a very underrated actor. He's done other things that he's been really great in, but I think he's particularly good in that movie. And it's one of those movies that you can look at it just on the surface as, kids, cause some trouble and then they get, slowly killed off by this creature thing. But it's more about that. It's about vengeance. It's about a father's love for his son. It's such a great movie. But on that other sense, as far as horror movies go, I really love a movie called Reanimator, which I thought was really great, and a movie called Frankenhooker, and both because they're so cheesy and so just overall silly as far as that genre goes. Yeah. And it's so fun to watch. You just can't you can't not enjoy it. I mean, I guess you can. There's people that like it. But for someone like me, it's just like, it's so over the top that it's just fantastic.
Yeah, those are fun movies. The cheesy horror movies are always great. Where can people find you before we wrap things up here? Like, where can people find your work and get a hold of you?
So I do have my own website, stevesabo.com, STEVESABO.com. I'm also on Facebook and MySpace still. I mean, I'm not even on MySpace, but I still have a MySpace account. Yeah. I'm on Instagram. I'm on YouTube. Always when you just make sure you do comedian Steve Sabo, because there's other Steve Sabos that are out there that have done things. One of them happens to be a very well-known and popular gay male model, which is kind of funny because he – and I joke about this, but it's really true. If you Google image search me, the first 5 or 6 pictures will be Steve Sabo, me, the comedian, but the next 5 or 6 pictures will be of this young, buff, shirtless dude, that who's I'm straight, but I'll say he's dreamy. You know what I mean? He's a good-looking dude, great shape. So there's been more than a few women that went to my show expecting that guy to appear on stage, and I very disappointing for them under those circumstances. But I'm out there. Yeah, obviously I got. I'm on Pandora. I'm on Rhapsody. In fact, I was one of the very first comedians to have a Pandora station, which is weird. I don't even know why, but I was one of the very first few. And so you can listen to all my stuff out there. I'm on Sirius Satellite Radio. I'm out there. You just Google my name, Steve Sabo, in comedy or comedian, you'll find me. But definitely at my website, stevesabo.com.
Yeah, we'll put some links in the show notes too, so people can find you. Anything else before we let you go here tonight?
I don't know. I want this thing is about my book. Let's talk about the book for a second, and I'll say that the How to Fail at Stand-Up Comedy book is just to let people know that it's not just about how to be a comedian or how not to be a comedian in that sense. It's got a lot of life lessons, a lot of things that are in there. Because I know some people that have read it that had no interest in comedy, but they enjoyed the fact that there's a lot of anecdotes and it's partly. This is what I say. It's a part instruction manual, part memoir, and a part cautionary tale, because there's a lot in there that's very personal toward me, so you can learn all about what it's like to be a comedian from the inside, something that people don't really get to see a lot of, but it's also can help you as a person, in any part of your life. It's all about the mistakes that you can make in any career that you're doing, and what you're doing wrong and how you can fix that kind of stuff. So it's kind of like in a way, it's partially a motivational book, I guess, in that sense as well. So there's a lot of good parts to it there. And I also want to tell people to keep track of me and look out, because I'm working on my next novel right now. So my new novel will be coming out hopefully in October. So to look for that as well. And I believe it's going to be called Kayla's Gone. It's another thriller. But hopefully the title doesn't change between now and then, and people are looking for that and it's not there. But that's going to be a fun book. That's about I say it's a fun book. It's not really a fun book. It's about a girl that goes missing, and a mother's search for her daughter, and how she finds out about the secret life that her daughter's been leading. up to that point. So it's definitely a departure. There's no comedy in it. I mean, it's got some funny parts. There's I'm a naturally, this natural comedy in what I write,
Yeah.
but there's no comedian, as a character, and it's just a straight up thriller. But I think it's got funny moments. It's got action. It's got adventure again, and again, hopefully, a lot of twists and turns and surprises that people don't expect.
Awesome! I can't wait to find time to read all of these books, actually, because I really want to. They all sound great. I mean, you can be the next Tony Robbins with your motivational stuff and stuff too. There you go.
Yeah. I mean, it's a different approach to motivation, but the reason I approached it in the way I did is this. It's like, I'm not telling you to do anything that I don't do myself. I made these mistakes. I did almost everything that's in those books. Almost everything, not everything, but a lot of things I tell people not to do, I'm telling you because I did it. I did it, and it screwed up my career. I made a lot of mistakes. Like one of the things that's important in there is that when I first started doing comedy, I wanted to make it on my own. I wanted to be, I didn't want anybody, to help me out, and that was the dumbest thing I could have ever done in my life, because the fact of the matter is you can't get anywhere without friends. You can't get anywhere in life without somebody giving you a chance and giving you an opportunity. And I was too dumb to realize it. I guess dumb isn't even the right word. I had too big of an ego, right? I was too, whatever you want to call it. Just I had too much of a chip on my shoulder to realize that if to be successful, somewhere along the line, somebody's going to give you the helping hand, and you should take the opportunity that you have. And I didn't when I should have.
Sometimes the biggest mistake you make is the thing you don't do as opposed to the thing you do. So,
100%.
Yeah.
That's 100% right.
Yeah. Well, thank you for your time. And if you do ever want to come back on and talk about your future books or any of your stand-up or anything like that, just let us know. We're always open to having you on. And
that sounds great.
Yeah. And hope you have a good night, and talk to you soon.
Thank you, buddy. Appreciate it.
Thanks. Okay. Hope you enjoyed that interview there that we did with Steve Sabo. Great advice there. Got a lot of good stories and everything that we could help us learn from the life of a stand-up comic for 3 decades.
Yeah.
You don't really get a chance to talk to people like that often. Hopefully, everybody checks out his book, "How to Fail at Stand-Up Comedy," which I hope to buy soon.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, I think you'd probably enjoy it, Matt. I mean, it's going to have a lot of good life advice in there and stuff, too, he said, for anybody of any walk of life.
Yeah, I mean, because, especially when it comes to, creative types, it's good to, hear what, a veteran has to say about, balancing, your creative life with, other parts of your life, and, because, like I said before, it's I've been wanting to read books by comics for a while, one of the ones Michael J. Fox wrote a few years ago, and I always forget to, but I think I'm going to finally get into it and just sort of, not just for the funny parts, but just to learn more about their personal lives, how do they balance this out, because that's, being creative is fine and everything, but if you don't, if you can't have a family or any kind of friend circle, it can get kind of lonely,
Yeah, you have to see what it is. See the things that, there's pitfalls you can learn in life, from people, even people that are in different careers than you. And I think that'd be good. Also, I really want to check out his the thriller that he wrote called Jester's Run, which sounds really cool, about a stand-up comic on the run during some interesting situations that he talked about in the interview. So that sounds really cool. I'd like to see that turned into a movie someday, almost the basic idea that he had. It sounds like it would be a good movie. I told him that. Anyways, any other thoughts on your mind here, Matt, before we wrap things up?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. Well, people, if you have any other suggestions for any other guests or anything that you want to have us have on the show, or if you want to be a guest on the show, we'd be more than happy to talk to you. If you have something to promote or talk about, message me at mike@cullenpark.com and we can set that up. You can also find us at All Too Real 2 podcast group on Facebook. All2real2.com is a good place for links to our like twits and books and grams and all those other social media stuff, you know, and a link to all of our previous episodes. You can listen to our reviews of recently of the Michael Richards show and our interviews with other people like Mark Christopher Lawrence recently, another stand-up comic. You know, so if you liked this episode, check us out. I'd appreciate that. Also, you know, now that things are kind of, you know, calming down from the pandemic, just suggestion to people, you know, when you're going out there in public, be kind to each other. You know, we're all going through this thing together, and, you know, remember how to act out in public, you know, because you might have been in your apartment or house for a long time now and don't remember how to treat a waiter or waitress or somebody like that. You know, you just be nice to people. You know, we're all humans, you know. Don't get so angry at the little things in life. I think that's always a good way to live. You know, it's hard advice to live by. I don't always live by it, but, you know, it's just, you know, smile, be happy.
Do it.
Yeah. You know, be kind, you know. And when you're going outside, make sure you wear some sunscreen.
Yeah.
You know, it's good advice, always. Wear sunscreen and, you know, wear a condom.
When you're outside.
Yes.
Yeah.
What? No. That doesn't sound
okay.
right. No.
Oh, okay.
No. Oh, no, that's bad.
Okay. Sorry.
I've been wearing this one for like 43 years now, so I don't know. Should I take it off now?
I don't even want to ask of how you're able to do certain things while wearing that the whole time.
All right, I'm joking. I haven't been. Anyways, so, but anyways, people, be kind, rewind, look at life in a good way, and
yeah,
be good to each other. Until next time, bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to All Too Real 2 podcast, a Cullen Park production. Produced and edited by Michael E. Cullen II. Music by Matthew Hawes. Subscribe and share the show. Visit us at cullenpark.com.